In this video, we're going to break down people's form on the Formcheck subreddit. Let's get into it. 70-pound barbell rows. Appreciate any tips. Let's get it, my man. Good hinge. Could get a little bit lower. And it looks like the grip is either a little too close or we're pulling up kind of too high. What's going on here is when we're at the very top end of the motion, your forearms are really almost like perpendicular to gravity. So that means our forearms are fighting the resistance of gravity here. What we need to do to make sure we're targeting more of our back, make sure that our forearms are parallel with gravity up and down. Really, I would move this barbell in a couple of feet, almost a full foot, right underneath you, and you'll get a lot more back activation. Because essentially what's happening here is you're just targeting a lot of your forearms. It's like a forearm curl. That's what I would do, brother. All right, a bench and deadlift form check from Dutch Athlete 99. Let's get it. This is a really sick machine. It helps you out with the lift off. Really cool. Yeah, but there's a good amount of rib flare there. Not necessarily a bad thing, but could limit motion. These look pretty solid. The main thing that I like to see during a barbell bench press is we're going down lower. So we're kind of aiming at the bottom part of the position more towards like the lower sternum. And then when we're going up, we're pushing a little bit further back. It looks like he's doing that for that rep. That would be the main thing I would work on. Elbows look like they have a pretty nice tuck. Yeah, nothing wrong with that one. All right, we're going into the deadlift. Let's see how things are looking. Okay, so you're shooting up your hips before you start the deadlift. Yeah. It's like you're locking out your knees before you even start the lift, and then you're pulling all through your low back. He's leveraging his body underneath the bar. He's doing good when he first gets started, right? He's going down with his hips, getting everything braced. It looks good from here, but the problem is instead of extending both at the knees and the hips at the same time, you're just extending the knees. Almost all the way, full extension of the knee, and then your hips go. That would be my main critique, is make sure you're extending both those at the same time, and it should be good. A beginner gauntlet squat from Eagle Star 7. Ooh, okay. Back is relatively flat to begin with, and then as she's going through the range of motion, she essentially has to dump her pelvis underneath because she doesn't have the mobility. Really, it just looks like a lot of orientation. What I would do in this situation is I would focus on just stacking your rib cage and your pelvis. Basically just making sure that you keep your rib cage and your pelvis on top of each other, just kind of like right here, right? But at a certain point, you start to lose that. And I would say probably right about maybe 70-ish degrees, 60-ish degrees of hip flexion. That's where you'd want to stop. And you want to build a lot of strength just in that range of motion. Another thing that could really help you out here, it looks like you do have some heel elevation. I would elevate those heels a little bit more to make sure you can feel good weight through your heels. Make sure you're not orienting the pelvis, and you can keep basically more weight in that stack position. It'll just reinforce that stack position so much more. Full range of motion in most cases is going to be cool. But if you're having low back discomfort or like SI discomfort, anything really going on with the hips there, I would recommend not going through your full range of motion, stopping before you start to compensate, and working on getting stronger in that position, and then working on getting lower as you feel more confident in that range, maintaining the stack of the pelvis and the rib cage. I have a couple videos talking about that on YouTube if you want to check them out. RDLs, this is one of my favorites. This is one that is not done correctly all the time, so let's see what you got. W skill? Cool. In a Smith machine, RDLs are a little bit tricky because one of the main cues that I give my clients is keeping the bar as close to your legs as possible. That bar should essentially be dragging against your shins as you go down. So when there's a Smith machine and you're locked into its range of motion, then you're having to add more space. It can take away from, putting more load on the hamstrings and maybe put more stress through the low back. But let's just see how things are going. Okay, so it does look like you have a good hip shift. Another big tip for the RDL is you want to think about the hips coming back during the RDL. Once the hips stop the motion, right? Once we can't bring the hips back any further, that's where we're stopping. if we go lower than that position, what's going to start to happen is to get lower, you have to orient your pelvis, same kind of concept as last time. And we're going to start to kind of arch the low back. We'll start moving more through the low back at that point. He does a great job of just pushing the hips back. Once he kind of stops there, straightening out. The only thing I would change here is his footwear. He has big squishy heels for a leg day. I normally don't recommend that. You're going to have a harder time feeling good foot contact on the floor when you're doing things like RDLs. And you need to make sure that you're putting a lot of weight through the heels in order to get the most hip hinge possible. This one looks good. Probably my smoothest 315 to date, but my low back felt pretty raw after the fact. Anything about the form I could fix. We have a pretty big arch in our low back, which also makes sense since we're doing more of a low bar squat variation here. Most people that do a low bar back squat are going to have some SI joint, some low back pain, because simply you are bending more at your hips, you're flexing over more. So if you want to feel less SI joint shearing forces, low back pain, really what I would say here is to keep your heels elevated. For most people, even for myself, if you have lengthy femurs compared to your tibias, really you just need to elevate your heels if you want to make it more of a quad dominant squat. So elevate the heels with some wedges. Could be a 2.5, 5 pound plate at the gym, something just to keep the heels elevated. That's going to allow you to drive the knees more forward, get more quad work done without having to force a lot of the hips back. Most tall guys' anatomy, like this guy, as well as myself, the longer femurs just make it harder for you to get the knees over the toes. So elevating the heels helps you get more knees over the toes and less of this hip going back, which is going to help you keep more upright. And then we're going to have less back pain, probably. Another key concept here is, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but the stack. Keeping the heels elevated will help encourage the stack. You'll have a better ability to keep your core stable during movements like a squat. We're going to do one more and then we're going to close out here. Okay, this is one that is not so common in here, a dumbbell row form. First things first, I don't like the position that this leg is in. I want to get this leg out of the way because if you're going to do any kind of row variation, especially if it's more of like a lat row where you need to drive the elbow back, this leg is going to be in the way. So hopefully it's not, okay, you're keeping that way. So when we're rowing like this, we're really not getting a lot of back activation, especially if we're trying to keep the elbows tucked in more. We need to keep the forearms, once again, same concept here, keep the forearms parallel with gravity. So that forearm should be straight up and down with my cursor here. So that leg needs to move back, maybe have the other leg out and kind of front that way, or whatever you need to do to kind of just get this leg out of the way. Focus on either keeping this hand underneath the elbow and keeping, like I said, the forearm stacked with gravity. Or if you want to target more of your upper back, what I would then say is flare this elbow out a little bit more. So maybe the elbow would be kind of here in this position, right? So more elbow flare. And then you're doing more of kind of like a horizontal row. If you can do that, you'll target more of your upper back. But really in this case, you're not getting a whole lot other than just, maybe your brachioradialis really in this case. It's not like you're not going to get any back because you're still bringing your elbow back, but you can make this better with just a simple switch. If you got value out of this video, let me know by hitting like and subscribe if you're feeling generous. There's more videos like this on the way. Bye.